the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Henry Shelton, Army General, who was just leaving, and he was being replaced by an Air Force General, Richard Myers. He was also consulted. And the commander of CENTCOM, General Abizaid, was also consulted about this paper. And according to Feith, and I'm trying now to get each of these three generals to confirm this, and I've been working on this for the last 48 hours to get them to comment. None of them have responded to my inquiries so far. We'll see if they do respond. I suspect they will not be willing to comment. But according to Feith, they all gave their approval. In the case of Abizaid, he said he was enthusiastic about this idea. And the memo was specifically presenting the objective of regime change in a series of regimes. Now, Feith blanks out, deletes the names of the countries which were to be the target for regime change. But we know from Wes Clark's 2003 book that it was the 7 countries that I've named. Afghanistan, I didn't name Afghanistan, but Afghanistan was the first, followed by Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Sudan, Libya, and Somalia. Those were the names of the countries who were to be targets for regime change. Now, Bush did not accept that as a national policy. But 3 days later, Rumsfeld made that an official Pentagon strategic guidance for all commanders in the so-called War on Terror. And what I want to point out, what I want to get across here is that this really is the origin of the concept of the War on Terror, the global War on Terror. It was in the Pentagon from Rumsfeld, drafted by Douglas Feith, Paul Wolfowitz, approved by Rumsfeld, but also vetted with the military leadership. And it had nothing to do with al-Qaeda. None of those countries, except for Afghanistan, was being accused. Douglas Feith does not claim that there was any evidence or that they believed that any of those countries were involved in 9/11 or were involved in supporting al-Qaeda. It was simply that these were enemy states. In some way or shape, they were accused of supporting terrorism of some kind. But this was an opportunity to take down our regimes that are associated with enemy states. So the War on Terror was never intended to be about al-Qaeda, about those who carried out 9/11. It was simply a device for the neocons and for the U.S. military to have a set of tasks that had to do with taking down regimes. And I'll close by a quote from an anonymous officer who, in a conversation with General Wes Clark in November of 2001, just a few weeks after this document it was turned into an official Pentagon guidance for commanders, strategic guidance for commanders. He told Wes Clark, "We are not good at counterterrorism. We're good at taking down regimes." Now, what he meant by that, of course, was that we're not interested in counterterrorism because it does not fit the needs of the military bureaucracy for maintaining their budget, their weapon systems, their personnel, their roles and missions, and their doctrines. What does do that is regime change, because that requires military occupation. That requires a major military operation in any state where it's going to be done. So again, it's not only the neocons who responded in 9/11 by exploiting the opportunity to attack state enemies and not terrorists. It was the U.S. military. Now, I don't have time to go into this, but there is a sequel. And that sequel is, of course, that now that the Iraq War has become the war for the U.S. military, that, of course, then had to be used to promote the military's interest in saying that, well, we are doing something about terrorism, and Iraq is the template. Iraq is the model for how the United States should do terrorism. And there is a quote from the head of the special operations in the U.S. Army, in the U.S. Pentagon, General William Boykin, Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Warfighting Support. He said, in April of 2005 that the anti-insurgency tactics the U.S. military is learning in Iraq could be applied globally, which would turn the war on terrorism into a, quote, war on insurgency. And so what we're seeing here is again, military bureaucracies, like any other bureaucracy, it's not special to the military, like any other bureaucracy, maintains its empire, as Carl Bilder said, by manufacturing a strategy, manufacturing doctrine that will fit their own bureaucratic needs. That's the problem that we face. And it is not something that any existing political movement, party, organization is geared to deal with. And that is what I believe the Independent Institute and all other well-intentioned organizations in this country ought to be really focusing on. Thank you.